I'm Matt McClure, and this is Currents.
Fair or foul? The next chapter in the fight over same-sex marriage could be a chapter amendment to the bill after it's passed. Plus, it's a pilgrimage to New Jersey. We'll take you there.
My faith was like a diamond, and I didn't clean it for a long time. And the Cusillo helped me to shine it and make it more shine.
And we all know Shakespeare, but there's more to the story.
Writing a play like the Book of Sir Thomas More took a lot of guts because you had guys like Edmund Tilney, the censor for Queen Elizabeth.
Well, good evening and thanks for joining us. One Republican state Senate vote stands between history and tradition in New York. 29 Senate Democrats and 2 Republican senators remain kind of in a holding pattern as they wait for Senate Majority Leader Dean Skelos to bring Governor Andrew Cuomo's Marriage Equality Act to the Senate floor. And one more Republican senator elects to cross the traditional marriage threshold to vote yes on same-sex marriage. If the last-minute push to pass the controversial measure succeeds, New York will become the 6th state and the most populous in the country to grant marriage licenses to same-sex couples. While the day-in, day-out speculation on the would-be vote has been driven in large part by Republican state senators like Putnam County's Greg Ball. Now he worries that the bill, which has already passed the Democratic-led Assembly, does not provide enough protections to religious institutions and individuals, and he fears that it could open up faith-based groups to considerable litigation. Senator Ball has led the push to include stronger religious exemptions in the bill itself, but in yet another twist, well, now lawmakers are considering chapter amendments to the governor's bill. Those would be added later. Well, it is being reported that Assembly Speaker Sheldon Silver has actually seen a draft chapter amendment for religious exemptions today and found it, quote, acceptable. Well, one group who finds chapter amendments anything but acceptable is the New York State Catholic Conference. And I'm joined now over the phone by the conference's communications director, Dennis Paus. Dennis, thanks for joining us on a busy day. We really appreciate it.
No problem, Matt. I'm happy to be on. Thank you for having me.
Well, thanks for coming on again. And first of all, let our viewers in on a little bit of, I guess, kind of a view from Albany, kind of where you see things and what you're hearing right now.
Well, the same-sex marriage debate seems to be in a bit of a holding pattern right now because there are some other issues that they thought they had an agreement on and then are revisiting a little bit. But this has been going on for some days now. The session was supposed to end on Monday. There are demonstrators on both sides of the marriage debate in the Capitol en masse, praying and singing and making a lot of noise, and it's been quite a scene there for the past few days. So it looks like there may not be a vote tonight. It could very well come tomorrow if it comes at all. Okay.
Well, and several news sources talk to us actually about this chapter amendment as well, if you will, because several news sources have reported, and we just kind of discussed it a little bit before we went on the air here, that Speaker Silver has actually seen a draft chapter amendment to this legislation. Explain to our viewers exactly what that is and why the State Catholic Conference has been so vocally against any sort of chapter amendment.
Well, typically a chapter amendment is something that is introduced in the legislature after a bill is already signed into law and they realize that there is some unforeseen problem with the language of the law and they want to clean it up. So you basically pass a separate piece of legislation called a chapter amendment, which amends the new law. What we're saying is if they can't come up with religious liberty language that's acceptable in the bill language, remember, it's not law yet. If they can't find acceptable language now, there's no reason to believe that the language is suddenly going to become acceptable after it's already passed into law. We're afraid the Republicans are putting themselves in a position of passing this bill with some vague assurances of we'll fix it later. Well, we've seen that before, and it don't always get fixed later.
Right. And why would the governor consider chapter amendments instead of actually putting the language in the bill? Is it just maybe quicker to do it that way, go ahead and get the bill passed and then come back later and do that, or what's the reasoning there?
The Assembly has already passed the bill, and so they would, if the governor amends it, the Assembly would have to repass it. And that seems to be the reasoning. But again, if they're going to have to pass a chapter amendment anyway, they may as well repass a new bill. It doesn't make any difference. and which is why we're dubious of the whole thing. We're suspicious of it. We've seen in the past with the MTA payroll tax that which our schools are unfairly forced to pay into this MTA payroll tax. We were told, oh, we'll fix that in a chapter amendment. The Assembly passed a chapter amendment, but the Senate never did. And we're just very concerned that it's going to work the other way around this time, where the Senate will pass a chapter amendment and say, well, now your problem is with the Assembly. And the Assembly has no motivation, once the bill is law, to revisit it. There's no more leverage for the Senate to say to say that they have to pass it because the bill's already law. They could just walk away.
Gotcha. Well, and you know, for me, something that I've learned since I've been in New York is there is never a dull moment in New York politics. And so things keep going. I keep getting the feeling, oh, well, it's inevitable that this thing's going to pass. It's going to be brought for a vote and it's going to pass. And then I'll back away from that feeling and say, okay, things are happening that kind of make me think, oh, maybe it's not going to pass. I don't know. What feeling do you get? And is the fact that the State Catholic Conference is protesting the chapter amendments to the extent that you are, is that a sign that you think maybe, well, it's inevitable this thing's going to pass, we need to protect ourselves?
Well, no, we don't think it's inevitable. And frankly, I'm glad you raised that because our position is they should just kill this bill. There is not support in the Republican conference for same-sex marriage, and they control the Senate. It's inconceivable why they are considering putting it on the floor when there's, or maybe at the most, 3 or 4 senators from the Republican conference who might vote for it. It almost appears to be political suicide, and we don't know why they're doing it. It's hard to fathom, and we just think that they should have said right from the start there's no support in our conference, and left it at that. But now they've gotten themselves in a position where it seems they've committed to a floor vote, and it just does not seem to make political sense.
And quickly here, Dennis, what would the response of the Catholic Conference be should the bill actually come to a vote and pass?
Well, of course, we will be disappointed with all sides, starting with Governor Cuomo, who introduced this legislation and has pushed so hard for it. Our Catholic governor, who has made this happen, and then we have the Assembly, which passed it only by 4 votes, and then the state Senate, if they pass it as well. Republicans in the Senate, the Democrats in the Assembly, the Democrats in the Senate. There's plenty of blame to go around if this passes, and it would be against the will, we believe, of the majority of New Yorkers. Certainly against the will of the base of the Republican Party.
All right, well, Dennis Palst with the New York State Catholic Conference, thanks so much for taking time out to join us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Matt.
Thanks. Well, we did reach out to the Human Rights Campaign, a gay, lesbian, and transgender rights group that's been fighting for the bill's passage, but their spokesman was unavailable for an interview. Stay with us. There is more Currents coming up.
Coming up, it's a journey of faith and family for these pilgrims.
Through being a Cursillista, you learn certain techniques, spiritual techniques, that help you pray together with your family, therefore making your family stronger.
Welcome back. Well, the family and the state of the family have been topics of much debate lately as the fate of traditional marriage hangs in the balance with a likely vote in the state Senate on Governor Cuomo's Marriage Equality Act. Well, passing the controversial measure would pave the way for same-sex couples to marry in New York. And according to recent reports, the state may be just hours away from a vote in Albany's capital that would redefine marriage. Well, being pro-traditional family is a hallmark of a major movement housed right here in the Brooklyn Diocese. Every year, the Cusillo movement sponsors an annual pilgrimage meant to keep the bonds of family and faith strong for its members. This year, before the heated debate in the halls of Albany over family, and perhaps in spite of it, the Cusillo movement hosted a pilgrimage to the Blue Army of Our Lady of Fatima in New Jersey that left its pilgrims, the young and the young at heart, strengthened in their faith.
Today we have our family get-together. We do it every year. We go to different places. This year we are in Our Lady of Fatima in Washington, New Jersey. We have around 2,000 people between, the families. They come, all the Cursillistas with their family, their children. We gather here together just to enjoy as a family.
United as the 2 families, the Cursillista family and the natural family that come with us. Also people who don't know us, they become part of our family, the Cursillistas family. That way we encourage them to become Cursillistas.
As we are in Our Lady of Fatima, we decided to dedicate a rosary to her.
Dios te salve María, llena eres de gracias, el Señor es contigo.
Then the people, we ask them if they want to write any petition to the Our Lady of Fatima to bring in during Mass or anything. They are still bringing their petitions to the Virgin Mary.
As a Catholic, I mean, every Catholic will believe in Mary. Mary is our mother, is the mother of the church too. She's the one who gave us Jesus, and we believe in her. We believe that through her she can ask Jesus for us, and things can happen.
Y los hijos son la bendición de la familia, de los padres. Y la familia tiene que ser una escuela de fe, una escuela de amor.
When one makes the Cusillo ordinarily, the others see the difference. And that means that the parents have duties, but also the children have duties, and how to cooperate with each other and respecting each other.
Pienso que la familia es lo que más se parece a Dios y es lo que más la sociedad que nos ha tocado vivir trata de destruir. Así que el movimiento de Cusillo es un movimiento que ha ayudado mucho a las familias aquí en Brooklyn y en Queens.
Through being a Cursillista, you learn certain techniques, spiritual techniques, that help you pray together with your family, therefore making your family stronger.
In the Cusillo, we are trying to have our families together. That's the main thing. When a wife comes to do the Cusillo, they want to invite the husband as well. And as the kids, they become adults, then they invite them to do the Cusillo. We have too many families that everybody is Cursillista.
I'm Catholic. I've been Catholic all my life, but my faith was like a diamond, and I didn't clean it for a long time. And the Cusillo helped me to shine it and make it more shine.
I did my Cusillo in 1991, and it's going to be my 20th anniversary this year. And I'm still strong in the Cusillo. I learned how to talk to Jesus Christ face to face, and I really love the movement.
Well, stay with us. The fighting between Catholics and Protestants in Belfast goes on for another night. We'll have that story and the rest of the day's headlines next. Welcome back to Currents. I'm Matt McClure. Coming up in just a bit, did Shakespeare have a saintly influence? We'll find out. But first, let's have a look at the day's headlines. President Obama is expected to announce a major plan to withdraw troops from Afghanistan. CNN's Samantha Hayes has more.
By the end of 2012, 30,000 American troops will no longer be serving in Afghanistan, according to an administration official. President Barack Obama lays out details in an address tonight.
I think what the president will say tonight is that we're committed to a long-term strategy, but what we're doing now is not sustainable.
According to congressional sources, top military leaders, including outgoing Secretary of Defense Robert Gates and General David Petraeus, have called for a much smaller drawdown this year, between 3,000 and 5,000. The president is expected to double that and announce the departure of 10,000 troops from Afghanistan by December. Another 20,000 will be home by the end of 2012. Recent CNN opinion research polling indicates 75% of Americans support the withdrawal of at least some troops, creating political pressure that worries Republican Senator John McCain.
I always worry about public opinion affecting national security decisions, but I also understand the reality of the country in which we live. And so I hope that the president would take in first and foremost our national security requirements.
Another question for the president as troops begin to withdraw: define the mission in Afghanistan.
What I've asked and what I would hope to see from the president tonight is basically a mission statement, a dedication of a mission statement back to a war on terror. That's a complete different war than what we're fighting today.
That report from CNN's Samantha Hayes. And while President Obama prepares to speak to the American people, First Lady Michelle Obama is on a goodwill trip to Africa. Today, she spoke to a gathering of young women at Regina Mundi, an historic Catholic church in Soweto. She told them that Africa has an important role in facing the world's challenges.
As my husband has said, Africa is a fundamental part of our interconnected world. And when it comes to the defining challenges of our times, creating jobs in our global economy, promoting democracy and development, confronting climate change, extremism, poverty, and disease, for all this, the world is looking to Africa as a vital partner.
The First Lady also met with former South African President Nelson Mandela. She'll be in Africa through this Sunday. Well, rioting continued for a second straight night in Northern Ireland on Tuesday. Police say around 700 people took to the streets of Belfast armed with Molotov cocktails, fireworks, and bricks. 2 men suffered burns, another man was injured, and a reporter was shot in the leg. The rioting first began Monday night following reports of attacks on both Catholic and Protestant homes in the city. Well, Catholic University of America says it is not worried about any potential legal challenges to a new policy on same-sex dorms. A law professor at neighboring George Washington University said that he was going to sue Catholic U. That school's president, though, said the move to same-sex dorms is being made to reduce binge drinking and combat the hookup culture. In a statement to Catholic news agency, the school says it is confident that the sex discrimination law does not require men and women to be housed together. Well, when it comes to giving, Americans are a generous bunch. A new study shows Americans donated $291 billion to charity in 2010, an increase of close to 4%. According to the study by the Giving USA Foundation and the Center on Philanthropy at Indiana University, religious groups accounted for more than a third of total donations. Well, with the 60th anniversary of Pope Benedict's ordination to the priesthood just around the corner, Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio wants all parishes in the Brooklyn Diocese to mark the occasion. The bishop is asking each parish to observe an hour of Eucharistic adoration one day next week. The anniversary of the Pope's ordination is next Wednesday, June 29th. Now, meanwhile, a California company is honoring the pontiff in a much different way by naming a cologne in his honor. The fragrance, called a Benedictus, includes linden blossom from the Pope's native Germany and frankincense from Israel. Well, turning now to Rome, where the sculptor behind that statue of Blessed John Paul II outside Rome's main train station is defending his work. When the statue was unveiled last month, the Vatican's newspaper said it bore little resemblance to John Paul II. The paper also said that the statue looked like a bomb had hit it. In an interview with the Catholic news agency, artist Olivero Rinaldi said that other works like Michelangelo's David were not originally what people expected, but over time they became classics. Well, meanwhile, an ID card belonging to Blessed John Paul's predecessor, Pope John Paul I, has sold on eBay for more than $7,000. According to the UK newspaper The Telegraph, the ID card was issued in Venice, the city for which John Paul I was patriarch, before being elected pope. Now, the paper says the card was thought to have been lost, but it was put up for sale by a priest close to John Paul I, with all the proceeds going to charity. And visitors who want to tour the Vatican's oldest basilica now have a new guide, an iPod. The Holy See has started a pilot program to give visitors at St. John Lateran Basilica iPods with special apps that access the church's art, architecture, and history. A Vatican official says the program is an effort to cut down on noise from tour guides and to appeal to a younger crowd. Well, stay with us. There is more currents ahead.
Coming up, gimme more. St. Thomas More, that is.
They're showing a depiction of a hero who stands up against monarchical, raw, naked power.
Well, finally tonight, in this day and age of politicians pointing fingers and accusing one another of flip-flopping on an array of issues, from same-sex marriage to support for America's wars, you might find yourself looking for leaders who stick to their guns and vote their priorities, not their poll numbers. Well, look no further than St. Thomas More, whose feast day the church celebrates today. Now, St. Thomas More is perhaps best known for his courageous and ultimately fatal stand against King Henry VIII. More refused his allegiance to the king, who was determined to separate from the Catholic Church and make himself the head of the Church of England. Now, Moore's choice to remain faithful to the Catholic Church cost him more than votes or swings in popularity polls. It cost him his life. But it also gained him the admiration of his contemporaries, like Shakespeare, who admired his courage and his faith. Last week at the Church of St. Thomas More in Manhattan, men and women gathered to learn more about Moore's influence during his time and ours.
Thomas More was not a saint, sitting around praying. This was a man who could operate in the world of politics, very, very worldly.
Matthew Meehan, our speaker, presented this evening the subject of his dissertation, the book of Thomas More. And I think particularly of interest was the fact that Shakespeare was involved with this and all these other erudite playwrights and so, and that's revealing.
I didn't even know of this play that was written in much of it in Shakespeare's hand. I thought, my goodness, where has this been? And I wasn't completely surprised when he said that it had gone underground and then had surfaced.
The play was written by some of the most famous playwrights of the London stage, Anthony Munday and William Shakespeare, likely written in the year 1593. The Tudor Queen Elizabeth, the daughter of King Henry VIII, was on the throne. In a time when Catholicism was a crime, it is not often that a condemned traitor to his king is praised some 50 years after his death. Yet by the 1590s, More was indeed a popular figure in at least London, if not wider England. Writing a play like the Book of Sir Thomas More took a lot of guts, because you had guys like Edmund Tilney, the censor for Queen Elizabeth, who was literally threatening people's lives when they wrote a play that may cause some disruption in the Queen's political agenda.
He was showing an example of citizenship when there was chaos. And that's why Shakespeare and this other writer wrote about him.
They're showing a depiction of a hero who stands up against monarchical, raw, naked power, i.e. tyranny. So trying to get that through the censors is amazing, that they would try to essentially defeat tyranny by showing a heroic opposition to it. Why, under these dangerous circumstances, labor to produce a favorable account of Thomas More, who died a recalcitrant papist in open opposition to the reigning queen's dearly departed father? Why do that at all? Put simply, the play is an attempt to re-educate Londoners about citizenship by means of an exemplar.
It's a lot easier to go along rather than as the image that we have of More, of actually standing up in a very direct way for what he believed. His faith was really amazing to me, and I wish I would have that kind of strength of faith and character.
The lesson for all of us is appropriate to our times with the chaos that goes on in Washington and the people. We hear that the people that represent us are so, forgive me, paltry. They're paltry, they're pettiness. But here was a statesman, here was a man that everybody admired.
If anything, More stands as a champion for law, a champion for Republican government, natural rights, natural law, against naked, raw power. That is the struggle of our day.
Standing up for what you believe, it is kind of a rarity these days. Well, that is it for this edition of Currents. Now, New York may be on the eve of an historic vote to redefine marriage. Stay with Currents as we count down to the possible vote on same-sex marriage and cover it from the unique faith perspective that we like to do here. Until the next time we join you, though, be sure to visit us online over at currentsny.net. You can also check us out on Facebook and on Twitter. For all of us here at Currents, I'm Matt McClure. Thanks so much for watching and have a great night.